Hello everyone, welcome to Login. Today I'm doing a quick video on my most anticipated games in 2026, ranking them based on what I'm personally most excited to play. At number 10, we've got 007 First Light. This is the first proper James Bond game in years, and it's being developed by IO Interactive, the studio behind the modern Hitman games. They built a really strong, solid reputation for quality and smart design, so that already makes this interesting. From what we've seen so far, there's still stealth, gadgets, and all the classic Bond elements, but the thing that I really like is how cinematic it looks. Some of the action honestly feels closer to Uncharted than Hitman, and I wish there were more games like Uncharted. One thing that's come up recently is that the developers have talked about modernizing Bond a bit. I get why they'd want to do that, but I'm personally hoping they still stick fairly close to the traditional Bond style, because that's a big part of the appeal to me. Still, if they balance it well and mix Hitman style design with cinematic action, this could turn out to be something really special. At number 9, I've got GTA 6. I love GTA, I really enjoyed GTA 5 and 4, and my favorite GTA of all time is still San Andreas. This is clearly a massive game, and one we've been waiting for a very long time. The main reason it is a bit lower on my list is that I'm still not completely sure how I want to play it. Usually I prefer this type of games on PC, and while I could play it on PlayStation 5, the 30 frame cap is a bit of a downside for me personally. We also still haven't seen much actual gameplay yet, so there's a lot we don't know. I'm also really curious to see just how ambitious the world design is this time, because that's always been one of Rockstar's biggest strengths. And looking at their track record, especially with how good Red Dead Redemption 2 was, it's really hard to imagine this not being an excellent game. I'm a little bit concerned that they might want to tone down some of the humor. I still really hope that they do keep that edge, the humor, the satire, and the parody that made the older game so iconic. At number 8, I've got Blood of Dawnwalker. This is the first game from a new studio called Rebel Wolves, made up of developers who previously worked on The Witcher and Cyberpunk 2077, which are both excellent games that I really loved. So even though this is their first project as a studio, that background alone makes me very interested. That said, because it is their first game, I don't think we can be 100% sure about the final quality yet. Some of the footage we've seen so far looks a little rough around the edges, but at the same time, the core gameplay looks really fun. What really excites me is the idea of playing a vampire in a medieval open world. We honestly haven't had a great vampire RPG like this in a long time, and this could end up being one of the best vampire games in years if they get it right. I also love how dark the tone is. The atmosphere looks heavy, moody, and very focused on tension, which is exactly what I want from this kind of a setting. There's also this time limit mechanic tied to saving your family, which some people are a bit worried about. Personally, I'm curious to see how it actually works in practice. Overall, this one just feels risky in a good way, and that's why it's so high on my list. At number 7, I've got Saros from House Marquee, the Finnish studio behind Returnal. I honestly think Returnal is one of the most underrated games of the last decade. It took bullet hell ideas and made them work in a fully 3D third-person game, and it just felt incredibly tight to play. House Marquee originally came from more of an arcade background, but after Returnal became a big success and they sold really well, Sony actually acquired the studio and brought them into PlayStation Studios. That's exciting because it means that now they have even more resources to make something even bigger and more ambitious this time around. With Saros, it really feels like they're taking everything they learned from Returnal and pushing it further. The combat looks fast, chaotic, and very skill-based, with a strong sense of flow and momentum they've known for. On a personal note, it's also great to see a studio from my home country, Finland, making a game at this scale. Overall, Saros just feels like a confident next step for House Marquee, and that's why I'm really excited about it. At number 6, I've got Crimson Desert. This was actually one of the games that I was most excited about early on when we started hearing about 2026 releases. The more I see of it, the more it feels like a game I genuinely want to spend a lot of time with. The studio behind it, Pearl Abyss, has a lot of experience building large-scale worlds, and you can really see that here. The world looks massive, visually impressive, and full of verticality. It honestly looks like the kind of open world you can just get lost in for hours. The combat also looks really fun. It feels very physical and dynamic, with lots of movement and different ways to approach fights. On a technical level, it's also nice to see them using their own in-house engine. Not everything has to be Unreal Engine 5, and this game looks like it has a lot of technical ambition behind it. It's definitely a very ambitious project with a lot of systems and some risky elements, but honestly, that's part of why I'm excited about. If they get it right, this could be something really special. At number 5, I've got Phantom Blade Zero. This game is being developed by a studio called S-Game, based in China, and it has a really strong martial arts influence. In some ways, it reminds me quite a bit of Black Myth Wukong, a game I really enjoyed as well, especially in terms of style and presentation. The combat is what really stands out though. It looks fast, brutal, and very skill focused, with a big emphasis on timing, parries, and close range melee combat. I also really like the enemy designs. They look distinctive and memorable, and they give the world a strong identity. Visually, this game looks fantastic. The graphics are beautiful, the lighting is impressive, and the animations look incredibly smooth, especially during combat. What's interesting is that when this game was first shown, a lot of people didn't even believe it was real gameplay. It looked so polished that many assumed it was just a cinematic trailer. Something very similar happened with Black Myth Wukong as well. But since then, we've seen proper gameplay footage, and it really does seem like this is how the game actually plays. This could easily end up being one of the standout action games of 2026. I'm very curious to see more. At number 4, I've got Pragmata. This is one of those games that just keeps me curious every time it shows up. I still don't fully know what the gameplay is going to feel like, but honestly, that's a big part of why I'm excited about it. It looks like something genuinely different from what we've seen so far. The world seems to be taken over by some kind of robots or AI. There is this strong sci-fi mystery around what actually happened and why the world ended up this way. The companion element also looks interesting. It feels like there's going to be some kind of cooperation between you and the little girl traveling with you, tied into gameplay mechanics and hacking. I'm curious to see how that works. So gameplay-wise, it looks like there's a mix of action and hacking, and that alone raises a lot of questions for me. How do these systems work together? How much control do you have? I love games that aren't afraid to experiment with new mechanics instead of just playing it safe. This feels like a high-risk, high-reward kind of a game. It might not be for everyone, but if it all comes together, Pragmata could end up being something really memorable, and that's exactly why it's so high on my list. At number 3, I've got Marvel's Wolverine. I'm a big Wolverine fan. I've always loved the character, and I actually even have a Wolverine costume that I wear whenever there's a costume party. He's easily one of my favorite superheroes. So the fact that we are finally getting a proper Wolverine game after a long time is really exciting for me. This one's being made by Insomniac, and they have an excellent track record. Games like Spider-Man and Ratchet & Clank have been consistently high quality, so there's already a lot of trust here. What's interesting though is that this game looks very different from Spider-Man. From what we've seen so far, this looks much more brutal and violent, and definitely not a game for kids, but honestly, that fits Wolverine perfectly. He's always been a more aggressive, raw character, and that brutality just makes sense for him. I also love that they're going with the yellow suit. That's the Wolverine I grew up with from the 90s X-Men and Spider-Man cartoons, So seeing that classic look come back is a huge plus for me as a fan. If Insomniac delivers on the combat and keeps the darker tone, this could very easily end up being one of the standout games of 2026. At number 2, I've got Control Resonant, the next project set in Remedy's Control universe. I absolutely love Remedy's games. Control and Alan Wake are some of the best examples of games that really take narrative risk. They're strange, they're unique, and they're definitely not safe games. Remedy has always done its own thing, and now that they are actively connecting these worlds into a shared universe, that just makes this even more exciting for me. What really interests me about this next project is that it looks like we are moving beyond just a single building, big in the open world. It feels like we might be getting more variety in locations and environments, which opens up a lot of exciting possibilities. The new melee-focused combat also looks really interesting. It seems to use the same kind of shifting technology as the service weapon, which makes me curious how it will play. Very few AAA or AA studios are willing to take narrative risks like this anymore, and that's exactly why Remedy stands out. If they keep leaning into what makes their games unique, this could be something really special. And at number 1, for me, it has to be Resident Evil 9, Resident Evil Requiem. I love Resident Evil. These games just hit the perfect balance between horror, atmosphere, and action. Everything Capcom has released since Resident Evil 7 has been incredibly strong. I know Village divided some people, but honestly, that game is one of my favorite games of all time. I absolutely love the Resident Evil 2 and 4 remakes as well. Resident Evil 3, while shorter than what we wanted, was still a solid experience overall as well. What really excites me about Resident Evil 9 is how it seems to bring together the best parts of the series. Leon Kennedy is back, and he's easily my favorite Resident Evil character. His side of the game looks more action-focused, which makes perfect sense for him. At the same time, there's a second playable character, Grace Ashcroft, who seems much more focused on traditional survival horror and stealth. That split actually feels like the best of both worlds, because I love Resident Evil for both its horror and its action-heavy entries. I also really like that for the first time ever, you can switch between first person and third person. I usually prefer third-person games, but Resident Evil 7 and 8 were fantastic in first person. Being able to switch between them feels like it adds real replayability and lets players experience the game in different ways. For me, this is easily my most anticipated game. I just have a lot of faith in Resident Evil right now. And that's my list of the games that I'm most excited about. Let me know in the comments which game you're looking forward to the most, and if there's anything you think should have been higher or lower on the list. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe for more gaming content, and thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Logging out.